360 Info. I'm your host, Antonio. What you do for yourself depends on what you think of yourself. And what you think of yourself depends on what you know of yourself. And what you know of yourself depends on what you've been told of yourself. Yes, we back at it, and we bringing you back one of our good brothers, Dr. Gallman, Burnett Gallman, and we're going to keep this series going on for a little bit because we love educating you folks. But before we get into it, I want to remind you guys, I know we didn't get a chance to get into it too tough last week about the parade and festival. First off, we got that Juneteenth ball. We want you guys to come on out. Get your tickets, guys. It's look like it's going to be a nice event. So come on out there on the 23rd at the Mediterranean. All right. It starts about 6 o'clock. You can give me a call and get your tickets because you want to be there and dressed in your royalty. We want to see you there. So let's support that. And then on the 29th, we're going to be downtown. That's right, downtown. We're not going to be in our backyard parks, y'all. We're going to be downtown, and we're going to kick it off with a parade at 11:30 at 16th and Lakeside. And come on down to Mall C where our headliner will be Carlos Jones. So we're going to have games for the kids, crafts. We got the Black Soldiers going to be there. Black Drag Car Racers going to be there. A representative from the Tuskegee Airmen, the Triple Nickel, Air Troopers. You know, we do this with a purpose and education. So bring your family and kids down to get a little education and join in the festivities. You can give me a call at 216-323-6155, 216-323-6155. And they say everybody can't do everything, but everybody can do something. So, hey, get some flyers for me and let's put it on your social media platforms and let's make it a grand event. Come on, y'all. Let's make this happen. Yes, in the remote studio, we got our good brother Vince. What's going on?
Well, I'm happy to tell you that next month I will be doing a one-person show during the Borderlight Festival. It is a 4-day festival that happens at Playhouse Square, and I will be premiering a film that I did on the life of Winston Willis. There's a poem that goes with the film. I'll be doing some original music. I'll be doing some poetry, and I'll be posting that information to Facebook very soon. So I just want everyone to be on the lookout for that. I'm really excited about this opportunity to bring the message to the people. And the title of my show is Unmasked, Navigating a New World Order. So I'm really looking forward to bringing that to you. So again, stay tuned. We'll get you more on those events. You can check out the Facebook page and you'll get all those details. I'll also be posting information about the festival that Brother Antonio just mentioned. So you can plug into our network and you can get details and everything that's coming up in June and July. And just one other thing, we would like to highly encourage you to visit our Facebook pages and our YouTube channels. Please subscribe to our channels. You know, I know I'm on a mission. I can't speak for my brother Antonio, but once we get to 1,000 subscribers on our channel, we'll be able to do some very meaningful things with the content that we're providing for you. So with that, I would like to welcome to our airwaves, Dr. Burnett Gallman. You can see his middle name is Kwadwo, and we'll give you a chance to tell us what that's all about. I don't know if you were given that name at birth, but knowing what I know about day names, everybody's got one. Some of us just don't know about it. I know I'm a Yao. I don't know about Brother Antonio. I think what day were you born on, Lynn?
I thought it was Wednesday, but then I found out I thought it's Thursday. So
Okay.
I forgot what Thursday born was, but I know Wednesday was Kwaku. Kwame?
I don't know. I have
I
it right
can tell
here.
you because I was born on Thursday, brother. You a Yao. We both Yao.
Yeah. I looked at it and I said, wait a minute, I thought all the time it was Wednesday, but
Yes.
I think it's Thursday now. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Well, just want to give you a slight bit of information about our guest, and we've had him on a few weeks ago. We're having him on again, and glad to see him again. He is a physician by trade. He is a gastroenterologist, but he is also one who is steeped in the history of Africa and African Americans, and we'll be tugging on his brain to give us vital information, knowledge, and wisdom about our history. We'd like to welcome the 360 Info Network once again, Dr. Burnett Gallman. Welcome to our program, brother.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. Thank you so
Yes,
much.
sir. Yes,
All
sir.
right.
Yes, sir, my good brother. Yeah, you. Unfortunately, we only got you for a short time, so I want to get into it a little bit. And you know, we had a prior conversation, and I think it's a good topic and a good subject to possibly maybe towards another interview when we talk about medicine in ancient Kemet. You know, and how they were far ahead of us and dealing with medical science and things like that. So since you're in the medical field, and I thought it would be nice to talk about blacks, in relationship to maybe some inequities as far as the medical field is concerned. And I think it's something neat to know on how the system, on how this country portrayed and dealt with us in reference to the medical industry. And it's just some things that we need to know about it. And I think with that would be a precursor on how we look at the medical industry as a whole, how it is related to black folks in general.
Agreed. Yeah, I'd be more than happy to share what little I know about the topic. When we think about this whole idea that they call health disparities, um, and we look back at the history of it and what has been done and what is being done at this point, one word comes to my mind, and that is genocide, crimes against humanity, because you look at these things and that's what it equals. So um, I'm anxious to answer what questions you prepared so that I can.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
as you know, I like to run my mouth, so I can tell me to shut up.
Well, Doc, it's like a interesting relationship that we as black folks have with the medical system. Because some of us is just a starch believer, and we have a whole lot of confidence into the whole medical system. But a lot of us don't know the history of it, on how we've been experimented on, how they looked at us. Like I gave you that one piece talking about the Oregon experiment, and how blacks were, treated during that time. And then even letting us know and having an understanding about Rockefeller's role in with the American Medical Association, and how that was developed, and how the medical industry itself, developed and took off from that point. Could you kind of give us a baseline on that?
Sure. Actually, let's start before then.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at what I call slave medicine. And during the era of slave medicine, you had people who were experimenting on our enslaved Africans, and frequently purchasing them just for that reason, just to experiment on them, and that led to um, actually some diseases that were unique to people of African origin. One of my favorite is drapetomania. Um, this white physician from Louisiana by the name of Cartwright came up with a disease called drapetomania. Some people pronounce it drapetomania. And basically, what that was is a disease that caused Africans to run away for freedom. I mean, the sickness that they had was such that they saw us wanting to be free as being sick. Um, I think that, and there's a whole thing, I would refer anyone interested in this. I did a lecture not too long ago, which is on YouTube, in which I go through the whole idea of
Freedom
slave
we hope.
medicine,
Mm-hmm.
and actually, I think one of the things that perhaps at some point we can talk about is eugenics,
Mm-hmm.
because eugenics was a pseudoscience that evolved. It was started in England, and it was matured in America, and it was operationalized in Nazi Germany and in World War II Japan. And basically, this was a science that, in a few words, this was a science that defined Black folk as less than, as inferior. That, you know, even though many eugenicists recognize us as being human, as opposed to the slave medicine doctors who saw us as a different species, but the eugenicists saw us as a lesser form of human. And it's interesting, those strict eugenicists actually saw Southern and Eastern Europeans as being inferior to Northern and Western Europeans. It's so interesting because they had this really, really tremendous need to feel superior.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result of that, you know, there were several governmental policies resulting from eugenics that resulted in involuntary sterilization of women. And it's interesting because when I first moved back to Columbia, South Carolina, after my training, I went to medical school in Philadelphia, and I went to did my training in Washington. And when I moved back to South Carolina to practice, there were gynecologists here who were taking out Black women's uteruses, and they were multimillionaires on the uteruses of Black women. And this came to my attention when I saw a young lady in my office who was 21, 22 years old, and she had had a hysterectomy done when she was a teenage. And I asked her, "Why did you have it done?" And her only answer she could give me was, "The doctor said I needed it."
Mm-hmm.
And I asked her what symptoms she was having. She said, "No, I wasn't having any symptoms. He just said I needed it." And bless her heart, she and her parents allowed that to happen. So, and I found out that that was fairly common in here. So, you know, I started making noise, um, and those particular physicians who I had identified as doing that, I think one of them retired, and the other one just stopped doing it arbitrarily.
So, Dr. Gallman, excuse the interruption, but I have to ask a question. What do you think would motivate a physician to do something like that, especially knowing that you've taken the ability of a young person to exercise their ability to reproduce? Why would they take such an extreme measure with a patient like that?
I would think that probably the mindset of that individual would be the same mindset of someone who put millions of people in slavery.
Mm-hmm.
The same mindset as King Leopold,
Mm-hmm.
who said, "You're going to do this, or I'm going to cut off your hand." You know, when you look at that, brings up a whole different conversation.
Right.
We're going to start talking about the two cradle theory and the psychological, cultural, and development of humanity. And it's
you bring up right. You bring up something interesting because and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to have this particular conversation, because we you know, that's why history is so important. When you know what type of folks that you're dealing with, and you know the origins of a lot of stuff, and you know, because of situations, you know, here and there that cause folks, just like, you know, for our civil rights is concerned, you know, we got more and more rights as time go on, and it became hidden, you know, like we say, it was a physical enslavement at first, now it's a mental enslavement. So it's a progression. But that type of attitude, in a sense, still remains somewhere and since we talk about the medical industry, in the medical industry, when it deals with black folks and African Americans around the world. Look at what Bill Gates now. He has this benevolent type of behavior. He wants to save all the Africans now. For some reason, he ain't a medical doctor. Because, and based on what you just said too, is that those experiments happened all through Africa, all in America. These folks having, as far as these hysterectomies is concerned, and vasectomies, with that organ experiment, that what we was talking about, they took it was okay as far as the prisoners is concerned. They put radiation into their testicles, and then so they didn't come back and have any deformity in the babies and things like that. They made them sign to vasectomies, and I believe it was in that article, one of those states, I want to say Indiana, with the practice of eugenics, I believe it, I forgot which state it was, but over 2,500 people that they, called themselves sterilizing because they didn't want to deal with the imbeciles, the feeble minds, or the criminal. But I'm saying all this to say we have to understand the medical system that we are a part of, and we entrusting in so much. This is the point, and that's something that has been going on across the world forever.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I think, in my opinion, you rightfully point to the study of eugenics as being the cause, because there's an article that I just pulled up. I hadn't had a chance to read it yet, written by someone who, Tadashi Dozono, and it was written in a journal called Theory and Research in Social Education. And the title drew me in: Eugenic Ideology and the World History Curriculum, How Eugenic Beliefs Structure Narratives of Development and Modernity. And I do know that, for instance, most of us are aware of the Tuskegee experiment. And what's interesting is that at the beginning of the Tuskegee experiment, it lasted quite a few years, but at the beginning, 3 of the driving physicians were graduates of the University of Virginia Medical School. And at the University of Virginia Medical School, eugenics was taught as part of the curriculum of medical school. As a matter of fact, eugenics was taught as a regular course in almost 200 colleges, universities, medical schools in the country. So that a lot of the policies, the beliefs, the tenets of this pseudoscience were passed down, and much like what the AHA, the American Historical Society, did for the retelling of history, what happened is that they told a version of history very frequently that many of them knew was wrong, or they were basing their opinions on their racist beliefs, but then those ideas were passed on from generation to generation and generation.
Yes.
And I think who was Hitler's was it his information chief?
Okay.
Goebbels, I think. Anyway, he said, if you tell a lie enough, it becomes truth. Mm-hmm. And especially if you tell a lie frequently over generations. Mm-hmm. So that, for instance, when I first went into practice, even though I had subspecialized in gastroenterology, I didn't have a referral base large enough to support that. So I was doing general internal medicine. And one of the things that I found was that in my sickle cell patients, very frequently, they were subjected to so much agonizing pain in the emergency room because they were labeled as drug seekers. which I'm convinced had a racial component to it. And then there's this belief that actually, I think a few years ago, some people did a survey and found that a lot of folks, medical students, still believe this. And there's this belief that Black folks' skin is thicker and we don't feel pain as much. Right. So a lot of the tenets of eugenics, I think that those of us who are studying our history and studying the various streams of our past experiences really many of us need to concentrate on eugenics and see that eugenics actually has formed the basis of a lot of racist thought today. And as a matter of fact, there was another article that I saw that tried to see whether eugenics caused racism or whether racism caused eugenics. And they found that whereas they couldn't draw a cause and effect, but they found that most eugenicists were racist.
Yeah. And I can believe that for sure. Doc, and when you said that, it made me think about those experiments that tend to be pushed back in the annals of history about how those exploratory surgeries with women without anesthesia, back in the day, and I think this may be a good place to further take a look at this and an analogy on what we dealing with and how we dealing with in this country, because there's information out there. We talked about the book of medical apartheid, and this just giving you a little synopsis or outlook of what we dealing with in this country, that we have to take some of this responsibility on ourselves on learning our physiology, and maybe going back to some of the basic stuff that our people and our dealt with as far as the body is concerned a long time ago, because there's a book called The Higher Form of Killings, where they talk about over, I think, 300 or 400 times that the government has experimented on the general public, not only just Black folks, white folks as well. So we need to look at this thing, and this is why we having this discussion. We need to look at this thing really critically, because Doc, correct me if I'm wrong at all, or something that I used to say all the time. Two things. One, I would logically believe that most of the instrumentation and calibrations that we deal with as far as the physiology of the body is based on a white male and female in this particular country. Would I be safe to say that?
You would be very safe, and I think that it's a numbers game, because most of the times they base it on the people that they have averaged out, and the overwhelming majority of those people are of European origin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So with that being said, then, let me add this piece to this. Would it be safe to say, I know when people start talking about DNA, and there's there's a very small difference, in DNAs, even when we talk about humanoids and we talk about animals, but just that little bit of difference can change the whole, structure and physical of a mammal, as we can say, So when we talk about, we know we have melanin, and when you start talking about the biochemistry of an individual and how this melanin plays a role in that. So if that statement is true about the instrumentation, calibrations, and how the medical system is made up on, shouldn't we be having a special type of conversation? Black folks should be having a special kind of conversation when we going in there and looking at medical treatment.
Actually, I think that there are some medical researchers that are doing that now.
Mm.
There's a young woman, I've never met her, in North Carolina. Her last name is Boulware, who has done quite a bit of publishing on she's a kidney specialist, and she's done quite a bit of publication on the uniqueness of people of African origin when it comes to kidney disease. Her name, I think, is Ebony Boulware. Again, I've never met her, but I've followed her work, and she's doing very, very good work. I want to say she's in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, but I'm not sure. I know she was at Duke for a minute, but she's someone. And again, you mentioned activism. One of the things that I hope to do sometime soon is stimulate a group of people to attack. We hear about J. Marion Sims. J. Marion Sims is celebrated as the father of gynecology. He was born in South Carolina, and I think he ended up practicing mostly in New York City. And he develops surgical techniques that were revolutionary. However, in so doing, he performed surgery on enslaved Black women without anesthesia in order to test his theories. And in South Carolina, on the northeastern corner of our state capitol grounds, there's a beautiful monument to this monster. And I know there was a monument to him in New York that the folks they actually were able to make them take it down. I want to do that here. But what happens is that I don't know, this is probably more South Carolina history but we had a governor and senator at the end of Reconstruction, whose name was Ben Tillman. We call him Pitchfork Ben Tillman, who was a rabid racist. I call him the successor to John C. Calhoun. If anyone were to go and read the congressional record on anything he said, he hated Black folk. And there's a statue of him on the State House grounds. So that we have a lot of work to do, but I think we need to do it. As a matter of fact, I might add that Ben Tillman was his protege was Strom Thurmond. You all might know that name. So there's a lineage that we can work with. So, but let me see if I can find this. I have some notes here that I wanted to do this just to talk about some of those things that you alluded to, brother. There was a Dr. Walter Jones in Petersburg, Virginia, who poured boiling water on the backs of naked enslaved Africans, 5 gallons every 4 hours, just to treat typhoid pneumonia in the 1840s. There was another Dr. James Dugas, who pioneered eye surgery, experimenting on enslaved Africans. Dr. John Harden of Liberty County, Georgia, stripped blood vessels from the limbs of, quote, a Negro and 3 hogs in order to measure them. And I mean, it goes into even more. In the 1830s, there was a medical college here in South Carolina that used to advertise that we have bodies for you to learn anatomy on. Guess what bodies they were talking about?
Oh my goodness.
And actually it went even worse than that, because when after the Civil War, what many medical schools throughout the country would do, and especially here in South Carolina, because my research has been primarily in South Carolina, but what many of these medical schools would do is they would go rob graves of recently buried Black folk to
Okay.
take to the medical school to be dissected.
Mm-hmm.
So they exhibited ghoulish behavior.
Mm. Hey, Doc, I don't want the conversation to get away, but I just want to, without talking about this one piece, and you may can expound about it, because I don't know. I'm sure going to medical school, they give you the backdrop of this, the whole AMA and Rockefeller's connection to that, and how that kind of like directed the industry of medical practices. If I'm correct in saying that.
Uh-huh. Yeah. You know, I have a cousin. Let me see. There was Rockefeller hired uh, a guy. He was a Jewish guy, actually, and I'm trying to think of his name. And he did a report. You know, at one point there were as many as 13, 14, 15 Black medical schools in the country, and Rockefeller hired this guy to evaluate all the medical schools, and he wrote a report. And I'm mad that I'm blocking his name. And as a result of his report, large proportion, maybe almost half of the existing medical schools, Black and white, had to close. But it especially hit Black folk because the only medical schools that he gave a passing grade to were Howard and Meharry. The largest medical school at that time was in Raleigh, North Carolina, as part of Shaw University. It was called the Leonard Medical School, and it closed because of his report. And I recently bought a book that details his involvement with that. I just have not had an opportunity to read it yet.
Mm-hmm.
But he actually is one of the reasons why we practice. Yeah. Thank you, Brother Vince. Abraham Flexner. It was called the Flexner Report. And Rockefeller was one of the reasons why we practice the type of medicine that we practice today.
Yeah. Yes.
Allopathic,
Mm-hmm.
rather than more holistic and naturopathic, or a combination of that.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know, we know that he made a lot of money in oil, but then he was visionary enough to see that drug companies would become multi-billion-dollar industries, and he had a lot of investments in that. So he discouraged the cheaper natural herbal remedies.
Right.
And so, you know, again, that's a whole different field of study. I think it's very interesting, and I'm glad you brought that up, because very few people know that. You know, as I said the last time we were in discussion, nothing just happens.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things we take for granted, just like there are many, and I'm just going to mention this in passing. I don't want to get into it, but there are many people who are confirmed Christians who have beliefs that some things were ordained by God. When, if you look at the history, you can see the argument that men had in terms of some of the
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
so nothing just happens. Things and they're not always divinely ordained.
Last point, Doc. I just needed to be out here. See, you're right now. You're validating a lot of stuff that I talk about mostly, and so I can continue to talk about. And I don't know what has changed, recently about the schooling, as far as medical the studies is concerned. Nutrition courses. Now, I was told and ran across some information that very few, if any, actual nutritional courses are taught in medical school.
To my knowledge, that is 100% correct.
Okay.
And it's interesting.
Okay.
Back in the day when I came through in the olden days, the expectation was that you graduated from medical school, you put up your shingle and open your practice. Yet there were absolutely no courses on business.
Okay.
That taught us how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
There's no. I think that some of the medical school courses now have maybe one course in nutrition.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But it's not seen as anything major.
Mm-hmm. So how should we? I see. That's weird to me, because I have to say this, Vince. You might been to the doctor with your kids, or you're visiting somebody in the hospital and things like that. Matter of fact, I just had to deal with it a little bit with my brother having some issues. And by knowing a little bit about nutrition, I try to pride myself in knowing a little bit about it. And you go into the hospital and you see the food that they're offering sick patients, and I'm just taking way back, in reference to that, so I'm saying, this is what I'm saying again, people. That's why we have to step up our game. We just giving you a backdrop of understanding what this whole medical system is about, and you can't sit back on your loins and just take everything in and go along with the program, because hospitals are building up. They're expecting a lot of future pathology. They're adding on wings. Every hospital that I know of is adding wings to their facilities, so they're expecting a lot of sick people. So that in turn, we got to do a better job of knowing our physiology, what's necessary, and start teaching our kids to do better and demand more as far as our food and things is concerned, because they're trying to take a hold. I was just talking to another friend, and quickly, it's so many vegetables now that they're recalling because of E. coli. Is this due to Monsanto's, or him messing with the seeds or something or whatever? I don't know, but I never ran across this much recall on vegetables the way it was going on. So I'm just saying we need to take a better approach and look at this whole thing here.
The exception to what you just said about hospitals adding wings is in states where they did not expand Medicaid.
Oh, okay.
Because in those states, actually, they're losing hospitals.
Okay.
Small community hospitals are closing.
Mm-hmm.
In some places, I'm told, within a couple of 100-yard radius, they don't have any OBGYNs.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I was told in some places in Georgia, the nearest hospital might be 50 to 75 miles away.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and it's interesting because this also points out more hypocrisy, because most of the legislators who vote to not expand this Medicaid in those states tend to be Christian nationalists. So, I don't understand what aspect of the Bible that they are going by, because my little knowledge of growing up in the Bible Belt and being going to vacation Bible school and Sunday school and all of that, if people were to go by what Jesus said in the Bible, then those things wouldn't be possible.
Mhm.
So, again, hypocrisy. We know about that.
Yes. Go ahead, V. Vince. Uh-oh.
Get three
Oh.
network right here on AM 1490 WERE. Our guest is Dr. Burnett Kwadwo Gallman. He is a graduate of Benedict College in Columbia, South Carolina. And as a physician, he's focused on the health and well-being of all humanity. He researches the causes of racial health disparities so that they can be eliminated and optimal health can be achieved. Dr. Gallman, earlier we were talking about eugenics and the conversation turned to hysterectomies. And I was intentional about bringing that up because I think that's just one of the examples of medical apartheid that we've been talking about today. I know, or perhaps I believe, I'm not a doctor, so I can't say this with ultimate authority, but I know that there is an agenda involved in harvesting certain aspects of a woman's physiology through hysterectomy. And then I think on a broader scale about things like HIV, AIDS, and Ebola, and so forth and so on. Brother Lynn brought up the idea of Bill Gates and what he's doing, and just from research that I've done, I know that Bill Gates took his brand of agriculture to different countries, and as a result, there were unimprovements in agriculture because of technology that he used and so forth and so on. And then when I look at what's going on in America, we talk about America being the greatest country on the face of the earth, but at the same time, we suffer from some of the worst health disparities on the planet. And when American brand of eating and consumption and consumerism goes to other countries, then it affects them in the same way. So, we talked about the formation of the American Medical Association and the paradigm shift away from holistic things and into the allopathic modalities that are in force right now. That whole mentality, if it ain't working, take it out, really does a disservice to humans that don't really give their bodies an opportunity to heal, which they will do with the proper stimulus and the proper knowledge. There's a saying, physician, heal thyself. And I think one of the major issues that we have as beings on this planet is we really don't know ourselves. We have this conversation all the time. We don't know what a spleen does. We don't know
where it's located. We don't know where it's located.
You know, we don't know how our bodies function. So then when things go wrong, we don't know what to do. And we go to somebody and ask them what's wrong with us, So I'm just curious about what perhaps some of the remedies are when it comes to us having a greater awareness of ourselves, our bodies, how we function, and how we can take some of the power out of the physician's hands to determine our destiny when it comes to healing from things that happen to us in life.
Well, I think that you put it perfectly. I think that we need to know ourselves historically, physiologically, and culturally, as well as intellectually. And I think that if we know ourselves and we treat our bodies as well as we treat our cars, I think that we do pretty well. And that's one of the things that I used to tell my male patients, as Black men sometimes tend to be real macho. And sometimes, and they say, well, they were used to, and at least my patients here sometimes would brag, I hadn't seen a doctor in 20 years. I said, okay, so when's the last time you had your car tuned up? And they, last week, said, so you treat your car better than you treat your body. But Brother Vince, you mentioned back to eugenics, and what's happening now is that we're seeing a new form of eugenics that's arising. They're calling it transhumanism. And transhumanism is, they're flying under the radar, but there's a big literature out there. And one of the big tenets of transhumanism are organ donations. And let me read to you some elements of that. White folk get 71% of liver transplants. White folks are 4 times more likely to get a kidney transplant than an AUSA person. AUSA being African from the United States of America. Whites get more than 80% of lung transplants. Whites get more than 90% of all simultaneous pancreatic and kidney transplants. Whites get more than 60% of all intestinal transplants. Now, when I did that research, I tried to find out where the donated organs were coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nowhere to be found. It's nowhere to be found.
You're opening up some worms.
I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. Maybe it's my nature, but folks be disappearing every day, and they're unaccounted for.
I'm telling you, boy. I'm telling you.
And the who is really kind of interesting too. And I don't want to step on any toes because Dr. Gallman, Brother Hamptonio, is a police officer. But I'm just going to say that if anybody could get away with snatching a body, need I say more?
Yeah, that's something we have to look at, because I think they muddy the waters with these missing person reports and things like that. Of course, we have these young folks mad, running away. And it's a revolving door in reference to that. But I think they sneak in some of the ones that don't have these, people looking at them in the backgrounds and things like that. Man, I think if we really was to look deep into this whole thing, but you'll see some sinister stuff going on, because there's been reports of people found on the side of the road with their organs gone.
Yeah.
So there's been places to where I think it was Detroit or whatever, where they called this mortician. They found all these bodies and stuff. If we really paid some attention and somebody really did some work, we'll find out there's some real sinister stuff that is going on.
Remember the Atlanta child murders?
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
And was that ever really resolved in terms of investigation and determination who did what?
No. That
I don't think they recovered any of those all of the bodies either, did they?
I don't think so. Yeah. I don't think so. So that's big business. It's big business. And then some of the ladies be talking about now. We getting a little wiser on certain things, because there's battles that we should be fighting. Don't even know that we need to be in the fight. You know what I mean? That's the lack of knowledge on some things that they just coerce us right into it, and we follow along. Just dealing with the placenta and that whole stem cell situations. How much money did they making off the placenta? And we just give it away freely. You know what I mean? And then, of course, we could attach that to the old Henrietta Lacks piece as well. These are the type of things that are going on right up under our noses while we worried about basketball and all the rest of this mess. That is some sinister stuff going on.
And with respect to the placenta, the woman does not have control of her placenta. It came out of her body. But you can't just walk out the hospital with your placenta, which is another reason why, when it's possible, young ladies or older ladies, childbearing years, whatever, they should consider natural childbirth. They should consider working with a doula. They should consider bringing their children into the world in a way that's really more in alignment with how they can successfully survive the process. The way they do it now, they got you in the wrong position, for one. I'm not a gynecologist, but I've heard enough about it to know that the way they're doing it now is not the way that it should be done. If you do it the way we were taught to do it, perhaps you have a better outcome. But you come out And then you come into this bright light when you've been in darkness for 9 months. There are just so many things there that are wrong with the way they're bringing children into the world. It's like they put them at a disadvantage almost immediately. And then within the first few years of their birth, they're not drinking mother's milk. They're drinking some synthetic form called formula. They're not getting the antibodies that they could get from their mother's milk and the nutrients that they could get from their mother's milk. I don't know. I'm gonna step off the soapbox.
Yeah, real quick.
You're speaking truth.
Because when you hit that, I don't have the author in front of me, but it's like a blue covering book. So when you look it up, I got it from Brother Asa Hilliard. It's called The Magical Child. The Magical Child. And they went down, Europeans went down in Africa and was tripping on how those Ugandan babies were lifting their head, recognizing their parents and stuff a day after, and had all kind of great function. So they studied what they was doing with their children, even as far as when the children was born and the umbilical cord. This is how they got all that type of stuff. Africans was already doing it, So it's called The Magical Child, and it gives you that whole spiritual peace in connection with birthing a baby. So I'm saying, if mothers, if you're pregnant, get that book and read, so you can at least have some ammunition, so you just don't be open to let the doctors do anything they want to do to you without your consent.
And that hits on something very, very important. Now, I don't know whether or not this is the case all over the United States, but I know that in South Carolina, a lot of physicians were so egotistical that they didn't want to be questioned. So they didn't actually give the patients an opportunity to ask questions, at least not the Black patients. And I think that if there's anyone here listening, if there's any one of the takeaways, one should be that you should always ask questions. Mm-hmm. It's your body.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's your body. So you have the right to always ask questions. Mm-hmm. And if your physician doesn't want to answer those questions, you need a new doctor.
Ooh. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I don't know if you pulled that up now. Yeah, The Magical Child. I found it very, very interesting. It's just, to me here, I'm gonna say this real quick. It's the connection. With the spiritual connection that we do things in this country. It just don't jive up. There's those connections. Like you said, Vince, you take the baby away from the mother from the beginning, you know what I mean, and place them somewhere else. You're putting them on some other formula. You're losing some of the immune building properties that the milk gave you. It's just so many things that they're out of order with holistically, that we just go along with because of our ignorance, because we don't know, man, and it's causing all kind of problems. They used to, when your baby's born, put this stuff in your eyes. You don't know what they do. They want to shoot you with a whole bunch of vaccinations right out the gate. We just got to do a better job, my people. That's all.
Yeah. And one thing you mentioned about childbirth, Vince, is one of the things that I think they're getting back to now is the position of the woman during childbirth.
Yes.
If you go to Egypt now and you look on the walls of some of the temples, especially the one at Khan Ambo, where you have a wall that shows several women giving birth on a birth stool, and they're sitting upright so that gravity is helping the childbirth process.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And I think that there are some places that are trying to get back to that.
Yes.
That's the book right there. Yeah.
What is
Magical
that?
Child.
Magical Child. I have to get that.
Yeah. Joseph Pierce, Magical Child.
Asa was so good about books. I know whenever we would have him here, he'd have a backpack full of books that he'd give away.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, somebody else said that about him as a person. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, my brother loved him. That's one of his favorites. His story. He went to Egypt with Asa, and he has right now 12 hours of his documentation after they went out, into the field, and he did lectures after ASA allowed him to record all of that.
And you know, so he's a member. I think that ASA used to call that the royal family.
It could be
all the people who went to Egypt with him.
Okay.
ASA did a 12-part series on For the People with Listerville Middleton here, which I think is on YouTube, but I know that we are kind of prodding South Carolina ETV, Education Television, to make more of those shows available, because ASA, because Listerville and Listerville and ASA were like brothers. They actually did some business things together on a handshake, so Listerville also interviewed Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark, Van Sertima, Finch. And, you know,
hey, do you remember real quick his slogan? You remember he used to say at the end of the beginning of his show. Do you remember that?
No, not.
You know, I was trying to remember it. I seen several of his things. It was good.
But the one thing that I remember, his most famous, you know, people don't realize, many people don't realize, he was also a poet, and he published 3 books of poetry. And the last book, and actually, as a matter of fact, his daughter recently republished some of his poems. That's available also. But his most famous poem was on the origin of things. And I like to end my lectures frequently with the last few lines of that poem, which is minute by minute, hour by hour.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Yes, that's what I'm talking
about. Give it to us again, because we didn't hear it, brother. And we got a minute and 15 seconds. What was that saying?
The last few words are minute by minute, hour by hour. As you lose your history, you lose your power. So sharpen your eyes, tune your ear, so you'll know what you see, understand what you
hear. Yes.
Okay. Well, on that note, we're going to end the broadcast. I think it's an appropriate place to pause. And thank you for joining us. We'd like to encourage you to check out this broadcast on our YouTube channels. Mine is Vince Robinson. His is The Journey with Hamptonio. Thank you, Dr. Gallman, for being with us, and we look forward to your next connection with us. We'd also like to thank. All right, we'd like to thank our engineer, Tone Harley. Tone, you the man. You make it happen for us, and we are eternally grateful for that. And most of all, we like to thank you for listening and tuning in to 360 Info Network right here on AM 1490 WRE. As always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, make today your absolute best day. Peace.
Hotel.